What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another fantasy football video. Today, it's game day for you guys. I'm recording this video on Saturday. You guys may have access to a little bit more information than I do at the current moment, but we're going to go through some cornerback matchups, injury updates, some pivot plays, snap shares, and targets to monitor as we make our way through week 2 of the NFL season. Real quick though, let's talk lineups. If you haven't quite locked in your lineup for the week and you're unsure exactly who to start, a good tool is to use the rankings. We have them available on our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. So if you do want to look at those, link in the description. But let's talk about some injuries. There are actually a lot of big name players that are carrying over a questionable designation. Players like Le'Veon Bell, Joe Mixon, and Mike Williams, to name a few. Joe Mixon, I don't really expect to play. Mike Williams, he's coming in as a game time decision. But if you are a Le'Veon Bell owner, you need to have a backup plan. This game is on Monday. He is on track to play, but you have to prepare for the worst. Since there are no bye weeks, it's very possible that unless you have other players that are on the Jets already, or the Browns for that matter, your players could be locked in because they would have already played for the week. Then you wouldn't even be able to drop the player in order to pick up another replacement. And if you were trying to play it as safe as possible, you would obviously want to put Le'Veon Bell in the flex, giving you twice as many options if he did end up getting ruled out. I don't personally have any shares of him, but if it were me, I probably would still roll the dice. I wouldn't want to drop any player that I felt really confident in, and it has been positive news thus far. But considering that he is an RB1 for virtually everybody, I wouldn't be doing my due diligence by not letting you guys be aware of all the possible things that could go wrong. Jumping back to Joe Mixon, it is positive news that it's not a high ankle sprain, and he did participate in a walkthrough on Friday, but realistically, he's just probably not going to play. Giovanni Bernard, great start in his absence. And it's not that the 49ers are a team that's incredibly susceptible to the run game, but more that Giovanni Bernard can do it all. He can run, he can catch, and he'll get the volume. I don't suspect that the game would really get out of hand, eliminating overall touches. So if you ask me, he would probably be a virtual lock to perform as a top 20 running back at a minimum, with some upside if he's able to reach the end zone. Mike Williams is ending up being a game time decision, which is unfortunate news for the LA Chargers, who can never seem to stay healthy at the receiver position. Expect an increase in production for Keenan Allen, who is already in line for a very productive game to begin with. And you also have to move up Eckler, because between Eckler and Keenan Allen, they should make up the majority of the targets and receptions of this entire matchup. So it's great news if you own either of those two. Even if Mike Williams does end up playing, there's just no way they would try to push it and give him a high snap share anyway. So yeah, definitely look for those players to be some of your bigger performers this week. Other notable injuries, we have Juju Smith-Schuster on track to play. A couple defensive players on the Jets, CJ Mosley, Quinnen Williams. So if that tells you anything, Nick Chubb is a must start and has massive upside in this matchup. They're out their starting quarterback, the Browns are favorite, and they're out two main contributors on their defense. Nick Chubb having over 20 points this week, not going to surprise me at all. Another couple players I can mention, we have Dante Pettis, who obviously had a disappointing showing, but only played on 3% of the team's total snaps. The player who benefited the most from that was Deebo Samuel. Samuel actually led all receivers in total snaps, but the coaching staff has already came out and said he is going to be losing some of those snaps as Dante Pettis continues to get healthier. So what does that tell us? It's going to take more time for the San Francisco 49ers offense to look as it's going to when all parts are healthy and available. We're also still doing something similar with the running back group. They're also dealing with injuries. Tevin Coleman being out for about 2 to 6 weeks is going to allow Matt Breida to take the reins, but don't sleep on Raheem Mostert. He's very talented, so we would really just suggest that everybody pay a little bit of attention to the 49ers. We'll update you on how the snaps are looking, how the usage is looking, and the target market shares are being distributed, because with so many moving parts, it's going to be difficult to trust anyone. If you can trust anyone right now, though, it would be Matt Breida. We do have him ranked as RB20 this week, and I don't think that's even overzealous. Breida has always been a very talented receiver to begin with, and presumably the volume should come this week in quite the positive matchup. So moving to some other injury implications, we have Tyreek Hill being out. Mecole Hardman needs to be owned in every league, and he can be started in this matchup. It has the highest over-under of the entire weekend, meaning there are going to be a lot of fantasy points scored, and the team totals are heavily favoring the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm not saying if you have Mecole Hardman, you have to start him. I am saying that he is required to be rostered, because Tyreek Hill is going to be out upwards of 6 to 7 weeks. It could be shorter than that, of course. It could also be longer, but that's a significant amount of time. We know that Mecole Hardman was drafted as the replacement in case anything didn't work with that investigation he was dealing with. And let's be frank, Sammy Watkins has not proven to stay healthy for his entire career. Obviously, if you do own Watkins though, you should be thrilled. I'm excited to see what kind of production he puts up. Travis Kelce as well. He is going to ball out. So we're going to move over to some cornerback matchups, talk some snap shares as well. And it's really important to look at these types of things because early on in the season, it can be really easy to overreact to 1 week. Heavy usage, heavy targets, a dud performance, and all of a sudden you have a completely different opinion on your team as a whole. Well, I can tell you for a fact, overreacting is one of the worst things you can do, especially if you make rash decisions like trading your players away or overpaying for certain players in other situations as well. So monitoring the splits between targets, snaps, and having a good understanding of what we're looking for heading into this week is a very important part of the process to make sure that you aren't overreacting and that you are starting to realize what the trends are. Upon review, Washington, we do have heavy snaps by both Trey Quinn and Terry McLaurin, with Paul Richardson about 15 to 20% less. It'll be interesting to see what they do against a Dallas defense that can be pretty stout. I doubt they let up the amount of early points that the Philadelphia Eagles did. So even if the offense isn't great, I'm not expecting all that much from them in this game specifically. I more or less want to see the snaps. But if these are the two main guys, you don't need to be a very powerful offense to support two fantasy relevant wide receivers. I said fantasy relevant. I'm not saying one has to be a wide receiver one or anything, but just to have another guy in the league you can start in your flex consistently is going to be more than we had from Washington for the past couple of years. Another item that stuck out to me was Mecole Hardman playing in over 70% of the snaps. That just confirms everything that we had already expected. Mecole Hardman stepping into that Tyreek Hill role, but just something to boost your confidence a little bit more. Keep an eye out. In Indianapolis, Devin Funchess broke his collarbone. Other than T.Y. Hilton, no other wide receiver on the team, excluding Devin Funchess, played in over 50% of the snaps. There's going to be opportunity for another wide receiver to potentially emerge. And I'm not saying it's 100% possible for Jacoby Brissett to support that type of fantasy production, but there is going to be an opportunity for more field time for an Indianapolis Colts receiver. So it's a situation we want to pay attention to. In Houston, Will Fuller really never left the field. He played on 97% of snaps, which is fantastic. He only had 2 receptions on the day, 3 targets. So if he has another poor performance today with an extremely high snap share, you may have a really solid buy low candidate. And we all know what he can do with Deshaun Watson when they get in the red zone. In Chicago, we saw Allen Robinson have a phenomenal performance. Comparatively speaking, Mitchell Trubisky was targeting him more than any other receiver. Anthony Miller, though, is likely to start to see his snaps increase. He came in at 22% in last week's matchup. He did miss a lot of camp. Keep that in mind. He had an ankle injury. And while I'm not saying Allen Robinson cannot continue to produce, but we do have to understand that there are going to be more targets that are going to Anthony Miller. So our expectations definitely have to be tempered. This week, anyway, they're against the Denver Broncos, so it's not as if we had delusions of grandeur in the first place. For running backs, though, we saw Devonta Freeman and Ito Smith split the snaps right down the middle. We did know that the Atlanta Falcons wanted to ease Devonta Freeman into the workload, and I would likely expect somewhere in the neighborhood of a 60-40 split this week. I doubt they just launch him right up into a 70+% snap rate, but the Philadelphia Eagles, they do give up a lot of receptions to the running back position, and Devonta Freeman is the much better pass catcher of the two. Austin Eckler also destroyed Justin Jackson when it came to snaps, and this was in a game where they had the lead for the entire game. And just based on the pass catching role versus north-south rusher, early down specialist, in a lead like that, you would typically think that would favor that style of player. but this is very promising for the fantasy value of Eckler, who we already mentioned earlier in this video. So if this trend does continue, his value could be pretty astronomical while Melvin Gordon remains off the roster. Now, I know you all were dying to wait for me to address this. Antonio Brown is going to be playing in today's game. What is that going to mean for fantasy? It's tough to say because word came out that he is behind when it comes to learning the offense. Bill Belichick, as you know, he's not just going to play Antonio Brown if he doesn't think it's going to help the team. I know that's really difficult to wrap your head around because Antonio Brown out on the field seems like it can only help the team. But when you already have weapons like Josh Gordon out there, it's not like they need Antonio Brown for them to win against the Miami Dolphins, who just had Lamar Jackson throw up 5 touchdowns on them. And I know in the comments you guys were wondering what our rankings were for the Patriots receivers. And, well, we have Edelman ranked the highest, 18th. Gordon, he's at 22. And then Antonio Brown, he's trailing behind at wide receiver 30. But remember, this is as of Saturday. Those rankings could have easily changed by the time you're actually watching the video. So make sure you do check the updated rankings that are on our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. Link is in the description. And on our website, we also have the Vegas model that predicts the over-under game totals against the spread. It is incredible, and it's already gotten some amazing calls right. I think when I'm doing the next wide receiver start and sit video where I list home and away, maybe we can find out a way to release partial information so you guys can track it as well. Because it's a part of our website we don't really mention often, but it's such an amazing perk of becoming a member. Some other information that's kind of news but doesn't really impact week 2 all that much. Sterling Shepard, he's out. But now there's an investigation about them not properly treating his concussion, letting him go back into the game. They take that very seriously. Did want to bring that up, however, like I said, he was already ruled out way before that information was released, so not really impacting anything we didn't already know. But something that is interesting, Bruce Arians came out and said OJ Howard needs to play a lot better. Now, I tweeted about this after the week 1 performance. Bruce Arians was not happy when he fumbled in the red zone. Now, I didn't go ahead and crown that as the reason why he wasn't part of the game plan in week 2, but it's almost certain that played a factor. OJ Howard has got to be getting frustrated at this point. And I know you guys as owners, you're getting frustrated with Newton, frustrated with Howard. But for me personally, I just have to recommend you guys sit on him a little longer. Newton's case and Howard's case, they're a bit different, obviously. I'm not denying that Newton's hurt. I personally think he should be benched. Not necessarily benched for poor performance, but benched because he needs to get healthy. Obviously, the shoulder's still bugging him. He's coming off throwing the ball 40 times. Follows that up with this game where he can't even use his mobility to assist him in making the plays that he's used to making. So yes, he needs to take some time off. I appreciate the fact that he's not using his mobility because it will help him get better sooner. But stepping off the field, a week, 2 weeks, whatever it takes, obviously they think he's close. But I just can't see dropping him on the waivers when I do think there is a possibility that as long as he continues to get better, as opposed to take a big hit, have a setback, we'll see him potentially come around. But we're just about done here. Let me go ahead and go through some of the cornerback matchups this week. So since we only have a limited sample of data, we're in week 2, guys, I'm just going to give you the top and the bottom, the ones that are essentially mismatches. Not going to be all that many players, but should be pretty consistent data. But just eyeballing it here, we obviously know Julio Jones is in for a potentially really big game. He's going to be matched up against Ronald Darby, which is a very beatable matchup for him. Matt Ryan historically has not played well against the Philadelphia Eagles over the past 2 seasons. The pass rush usually gets to him, but we know the Falcons, they're going to be motivated. They just got beat pretty handily by the Vikings. Some other notable names, you have Robert Woods matched up against Eli Apple, and John Brown is expected to be shadowed by Janoris Jenkins. Typically a scary matchup, but recently Janoris Jenkins has been very beatable. John Brown potentially in for another game, much like we saw last week in week 1. Now some sneaky guys, Dante Moncrief, James Washington, and Randall Cobb all have plus matchups. We're not expecting too much from them, but if these big games come, we know that they should have the opportunity to succeed in their matchups. Some guys that are really going to be in for a tough road. You got Danny Amendola facing Desmond King of the Chargers, Devontae Parker on Stephon Gilmore, Kenny Golladay on Casey Hayward, and Robbie Anderson on Denzel Ward. Unfortunately for those guys, it does not look good for them based on the matchup. So if they're in your lineup, try to look elsewhere. But hey, guys, that's going to do it for the video today. We really do hope you enjoyed. We wish you luck in all of your matchups today. If you did enjoy this video, please hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. We thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.